Now I would like to introduce you to someone else who, if you kind of traced the path of my life, there are some key links that helped me get from one place to the next. You could kind of do a direct path from one thing to the next. And this particular gentleman is one of those links. He's one of my two best friends. And he also is the one that originally convinced me to write an ebook and get online and do marketing in the first place. Another thing that I'm going to reveal publicly, I don't know if you're going to like this or not, but I am. Isn't that great when you can do things like that with your friends? Say, this is going to hurt you a little bit, but me, I'm going to have fun. Who has kind of heard me referred to as the father of the landing page online, the father of the opt-in page, right? Okay. I'm more like the adopted father or the custodial father. This guy actually is the father because he's the one that came over and helped me create our landing page. And he's also the guy of all the people that I have ever met, and I've met a lot of very smart people, who, when he comes up with an idea, and I don't even want to call it an idea because it's not an idea, but when he strategizes something and then says, here's the way that I think you should do things, he's the person of all people that I've ever met in the world that if you take that thing and implement it and execute it the way he described it, it has the highest probability of working. Does that make sense? Most ideas don't work. Most marketing pieces don't work. Most whatever. Most of his do. And in fact, so much to the point that he oftentimes will do things like come up with a new idea for a marketer or do a competition with marketers or whatever, and his idea will beat all of theirs. Sometimes he'll beat something that's been working for years, the best that anyone can do, and his new idea that has never been tested will beat the other results by 200% or 300%. It's unbelievable. And I attribute a lot of it to, well, frankly, what he's learned from me. No, wait a minute. I attribute a lot of his ability, my theory about it, is that he is the ultimate master. He is like the 10th degree black belt of thinking like a customer. And for over 10 years now, he and I have these use case customer type dialogues. And whenever we sit down to talk about anything, it actually is kind of boring to most people because a lot of our conversation is, okay, so I'm a customer, and here's where I'm at, and here's what I'm going through. What am I thinking? And then we nitpick, no, I don't think that's what they do. No, they wouldn't be thinking. No, I don't think that's what they would be thinking. And we debate the minutia of the emotions and the fantasies of what another person would be going through and what they'd be likely to buy, not buy, respond, not respond. Does that make sense? That's what a lot of our conversation is. I realize that's a little weird, but when we get together, that's what we do. We talk about these kinds of things. So, with that said, will you please give a warm welcome to my good friend, Dean Jackson.
All right. These things are very comfortable.
You like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We added the Crown of Thorns feature in the back. So it's strapped to your
Oh, I love it.
Your dome holder.
Yes.
So what I thought would be cool to do to begin with is to just, maybe you could share a couple of things that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
About your theories, about how to think like a customer, how to market better, how to think of yourself as a business person. Dean and I were just hanging down in Florida several months ago, and we like to do ridiculous things like go to, what was that hotel we went to?
Yeah, we went for tea at the Breakers in Palm Beach, right?
Which is this amazing hotel where the approach to it, you feel like you're in like a movie from the 20s in Hollywood or something, with all these palm trees, and it's this just beautiful place. And we're sitting over tea, and Dean says to me, he goes, you know, I think that I might like to pursue the career of becoming a business philosopher.
Yes, exactly. That's it.
And it was weird. I was kind of like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, that's whatever. But the more I've thought about it, the more I've realized
Yeah.
you kind of are the
Well,
business
I've thought about
philosopher.
that too. I mean, it really.
I'm sure you have.
We were talking about it that Evans, he always says that it appears like the things that I do often work more on a higher percentage than most. But the
Like
thing,
pretty much every one of them.
yeah, but the reality is that, I've really got this philosophy of kind of like the carpenter says, measure twice, cut once. I like to think twice, act once. So anything that I try, I don't test anything unless I can see completely in my mind exactly how I perceive that's going to play out. So I go through a lot of testing things in my mind that don't make that final cut, because if I can get completely into that mindset of our customer and know exactly what they would do in that situation, it's easier to kind of, I was sharing with that, but it's almost like being an ombudsman for your customer and advocating on their behalf for your company. So you're kind of detaching from your situation. You're able to think like your customer and then advocate with your company, or, I say your company being the part of you that wants to offer something to your customer, and make sure that it's exactly what they want before you're offering it to them. Yeah.
If you have a process that you're going to put in place in your business, and it has 5 components, okay, let's say that you want to release a product, and there are going to be 5 steps, and you've got to get the thing produced, and you got the sales process up, and you got to get your distribution and your customer service and your marketing, whatever. There are 5 things, and you look at all of them, and you say, yeah, I can do that, and yeah, I can do that, yeah, I can do that, yeah, I can do that. And I say, okay, well, estimate the probability you'll get each of those done. And you say, 80%, 80%, 80%, 80%, 80%. 80% chance, all 5, which sounds like it's almost a certain winner. But what's the real percentage if there are 5 separate things and each one has an 80% chance? Is it 80%? No, it's probably like 20% chance, 20% probability of actually happening. And what Dean's talking about is getting each of those up as close to 100% as possible, so that when you combine them all, the thing actually works, rather than one of them not working. Or another way of looking at it is, if you have 5 things that have an 80% chance of success, you could be like thinking 4 of them have a 100% chance of success and 1 has a 100% chance of failure. It's another way to look at it. And what do we do when we get really close and then the 1 fails? We just go, I guess I was unlucky. How could that have failed? It had an 80% chance of success. You didn't really realize it.
Right. Yeah. And especially if you're talking about even multi-step processes where there's 5 of those things that have to happen in a particular order for something to be culminated, then it's even more important to think through, almost like a chess player seeing ahead of what the moves are, and not kind of focusing on the 5th one without making sure that you do the very best thing to make sure the first one happens.
Dean and I often, well, we've kind of stopped this recently, but we used to debate a lot over which was more important, ideas or execution.
Yeah.
Stop laughing at me.
Well, no, but I had a very good revelation about that recently. And so we were talking about...
That I was right?
No, well, I'll say that maybe we were both right in some level. Here's how we both get to win. That, when we were talking about ideas versus execution, if you're looking on an operational level, operational people will tell you, well, execution is everything. And maybe that is true on the operating level of your business. But when it comes to marketing, flawless execution of a mediocre marketing idea is not going to be as effective as flawless execution of a better idea. The idea is what has the opportunity to really be the catalyst to really rocket things for you.
And what I've arrived at, my kind of aha of this, is you need both, of course. You need a good concept and you need good execution. Most big successful businesses people that run big successful companies, I've heard this over and over, they say the last thing we need around here is another good idea. We don't need ideas, we need execution.
Right.
Execution is what did it. And these are experienced business people that have made a lot of money that say this. And the reason they're saying that, I think anyway, is because most ideas are not executable. Most ideas are just not that good. And very, very few people really have this capacity. I remember reading about Nikola Tesla, who's one of the greatest geniuses that ever lived. And he had this ability, he could build a machine in his head, and he would make all the parts out of all the different types of things, and he would run it. Sometimes he could run it and simulate running it for years in his head, and then he would imagine which pieces
Find
would
where it's going to break down. Yeah.
Exactly, and then he'd fix that part in his head, and then he'd keep going, thinking of it as a system. And then once he had it, then he'd go build it, right? He and Edison were kind of, each other's nemesis in a lot of ways, because Edison didn't have that power. Edison had to make the thing 1,000 times to figure out how to make it work, whereas Tesla could make it once in his head and then just go, here, just do this.
Right. Very interesting.
You didn't know that, did you?
I did not know that, so that's good to know.
Yeah. Another thing, too, I like your marketing mindset when people come to you and say, well, I got to figure out how to get my name out there. By the way, who would like to learn an amazing way, if I gave you a great way, cost effectively, to just get your name out there very rapidly, who would want to do it? Raise your hand. Okay.
Yeah, very interesting, right? Well, I'll use an example that I use, because a lot of the stuff that I do is with real estate agents who are very interested in getting their name out there, not unlike any other companies that want to get the name of their company out there. And so one of the things that I do at our main events, we do big 3-day trainings for realtors all over the country. And one of the things I do is I offer people a choice. I say, let's imagine that this room represents a 500-home subdivision, and you want to get your name out there. You want people to know who you are. So if I give you a choice of coming up here on stage and giving me 500 of your business cards, which we would distribute to everybody in this room, and we'll give you 3 minutes to stand up here on stage, tell people who you are, how long you've been in business, why they should choose you, or you can stay in your seat anonymously, and I'll have somebody bring you an envelope, and in that envelope will be a piece of paper with the names, addresses, and telephone numbers of the 50 people in this room who are going to sell their home in the next 6 months. Now, which one would be more valuable to you? Getting your name out there or getting your prospect's name in here? Far more valuable for you to know who your prospects are. Far more valuable for you to be able to identify your prospects than for them to be able to identify you. And it's interesting how that kind of mindset leads to, it almost is a detached kind of thinking, because when you're thinking about the part of you that wants to get your name out there is thinking from your perspective, that it's important to you that you want to get your name out there, but it's far more profitable for you to forget about you and offer something that's going to get those 50 people to identify themselves to you. So,
anyone have a good insight there? Raise your hand. Good. Who is getting your name out there about? And who is getting their name in here about? It's about them. Do you have to know anything about them or care anything about them to get your name out there? There's a weird, it's like this, it's an intuitive, assumptive, I mean, it's obvious.
yeah.
If they know who you are, they're just going to pick the phone up and call you, right?
Yeah. It's so funny. I'll give you an example. I had a friend, and did a full-page ad for him. It was all about just identifying people who are going to be selling their homes, and he put this in the newspaper in his area, and he had friends calling him up saying, dude, nobody's even gonna know that's your ad. It doesn't even have your logo in it. And it was just so funny because everybody's so used to when they're spending all this money on an ad that they want people to know, hey, look at me, I'm spending all this money on this ad. And so it's very funny how, in any industry, people, they get the logo, they get the big product shot in there. They get whatever it is that they are proud of, they want to get that out there rather than just focusing on what would your customers be most likely to raise their hand and identify themselves to you for. That's ending in a proposition or whatever.
I think we speak English much here.
Yeah.
Much good. Talk about the special glasses.
Yeah, see that's the kind of thing, is it's almost like if you have a way to imagine your audience sitting in this room. I give you the example of the 500 home subdivision. Whatever your business is, let's imagine that the general population of who your target market could be. If you imagine that they're sitting there, it would be like if you could put on some special glasses and just float around the room, and everybody who is likely to be one of your customers would just glow with this special green, and only you could see it. It'd be very valuable if you could get those glasses, wouldn't it?
And that's the difference between just trying to get your name out there and between getting their names in here.
Right.
I think of it as it's some kind of psychological mistake or a disconnect or just something that happens inside of our minds where we think, and I think it has to do with status, by the way, and that drive for status and recognition. Oh, I'll just give you a couple of examples here. I love scientists torturing animals in the name of us learning, although these aren't too bad. Two that were interesting. One was, I think they had monkeys and they were giving them grape juice. Apparently monkeys really like grape juice. I think these were chimpanzees, actually. Excuse me. And then they took pictures of all of the other chimps in their chimp troop. And they used the grape juice as the kind of the money, right? The value mechanism. And as it turned out, the lower status members of the troop would trade some of their grape juice to look at pictures of the higher status members of the chimp troop. Interesting. But here's where it gets really interesting. The higher status members wouldn't even look at pictures of the lower status members. They had to be bribed with extra grape juice to even look at the pictures. Isn't that interesting? The point is that I think that this stuff's wired into us, and we assume, we just naturally think, well, if it's going to give us more status, recognition, visibility, it's got to be a good investment. Because if someone sees my picture up there, they're going to want to, buy something from me. That's like a primal thing. But when it comes to marketing, you want to be careful with that one.
Yeah. And so it's interesting, that kind of thinking is often about thinking 2 or 3 or 4 steps away from what you ultimately want somebody to do. Ultimately, if you're a realtor and you want somebody to list their house with you, it's not about getting your name out there and saying, list with me or call me and start packing, which is often what the realtors do. It's about thinking, what would somebody in that situation, what would they be thinking right now? And they're probably wondering, I wonder what my house is worth right now. So if we send out a postcard that says, find out how much your River Oaks house is worth for free over the phone, that's a very different, it's not saying list with me or I'm the best. It's saying here's a service that's available for you that you can take advantage of.
Thinking like a customer. you have any other thoughts on this particular topic of getting inside the mind of the customer?
Well, I think that this exercise is very powerful when you go through it and really do the parts of the exercise. If you think about it, I love all that stuff you were saying earlier about when you think about the reality about who people are, when you're thinking that, what they're likely to do in a situation, it really helps you to kind of gear your thinking so that you can offer something that is within their frame of reality right now.
I remember when I don't remember when it was, last year or something, when I came down to see in Florida, and we were driving through next to Disneyland there, and there was a huge strip of kind of cookie cutter restaurants, right? All the chains, all the franchise chains or whatever. And it was the kind of drive down this multi-mile stretch in Disneyland that it was like terraformed. I mean, all this stuff was constructed. There's no like beauty or anything there. And of course, Dean and I go right into it. Like, I wonder who these people are that are here and what they're doing. And you started talking about the average amount of money that someone spends when they come there. And then we started dividing it up into when they get to go out and what they're thinking. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we were on International Drive in Orlando, and when you're looking down there, Disney does all this research that people spend on average $1,500, and they save for a little over 2 years to be able to do that. It's America. It's the place where everybody from sort of the east half of the United States comes to gather, and they're all in these hotels. And it's just interesting to really see what the reality is of who people are. When you were down that same time, we went to Walmart, and you talked about that. And I saw one of the most fascinating things that we've ever seen. We saw in the jewelry area.
Hang on just one for a sec. We were driving around in his neighborhood, and he lives outside the city. And we were talking, and I said to him, what's in Walmart? I don't go to Walmart. Hadn't had one around me. And he was like, you've never been in Walmart? And I'm like, no. And I said, let's go in there and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, let's just go look around. And it was fun. We went on an experimental tour.
Well, part of that conversation was we had found out that something like 25% of all the jewelry sold in the United States is sold through Walmart. And I thought, man, you got to see how that works. So we went in there, and I saw the most fascinating thing. They had a little plaque in one area it said, express yourself. And it had this little description for women saying that the left hand is for expressions of love, but your right hand is for self-expression and expression of your creative self. And then it was just conveniently located by the right hand ring collection. And when you really think through the psychology of that their customer is thinking, they're walking and they're looking in the jewelry and saying, boy, I wish my husband would buy me something like that. And that they're thinking, well, that's true for your left hand, but your right hand is for self-expression. So you should express yourself. And they're like, yes, I should express myself on my... But, isn't that the most brilliant thing? Thinking about what are the blocks? Because they might perceive, as Eben said, moderate to low self-esteem. I wish my husband would buy me something like that. It's amazing what happens when you can think like that,
Dean and I refer to that as evil genius when we see those things.
Yeah, and we usually spell genius with a J when we do it that way.
Right, capital J. Genius.
Yes.
Maybe even a Y in there somewhere.
That's it.
Gary Halbert, who's no longer alive, he was a brilliant copywriter. He called those types of things social engineering. Social engineering. You got to be really careful with that kind of stuff. It's easy to think you're doing something cool and trick people into buying things and whatever. But it's fascinating nonetheless. Now, I talked earlier about setting up conditions and structures to make it so that the person, your customer, who's looking to get involved with you, will see it in their own best interest, to their own advantage to do it. Rather than trying to talk them into it, set up the conditions so that they say, this is to my advantage. So that is conditions and structures, to allow the prospect to see it in their own advantage. So what are the conditions? The conditions are the person's there, and in their mind they have these values, and I'm going to set up this connection, this reconnection of their values. I'm going to reframe them a little bit. I'm going to affect the paradigm, their model of reality. And then the structure that's there is the rings and the cash register. The conditions and the structure are right there so that the prospect can walk up, look at that, and say, I am going to express myself right now, and I'm going to do this for me.
And they just happen to have the right-hand ring collection right there.
The right-hand ring collection.
Isn't that the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard? Right-hand rings.
Not
yes.
if you're a woman who likes diamonds and wants
Yeah.
to express your individuality. Any woman in here
I meant
invested in a
ridiculously
right-hand
good
ring
one.
based on that campaign? Not on that campaign or at Walmart, but I did it to express my individuality.
There you go.
Did you do it really because to express your individuality, though, and to signify?
Oh, see?
See?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Express yourself.
Now, you did that because you decided to do it, though, right? Well, of course, because I wanted it. Oh, no, I had nothing to do with it. Okay, right. Okay, good. But did you hear what she said? I did it because I wanted to, for me. She came up with the right-hand ring justification herself. Try talking somebody out of that kind of thing. Good. One more.
All right. What do you got?
I don't know, it's for you.
Well,
Frank Kern and I, who Frank is rapidly making it into the small circle of genius, schemery experts
Oh, yeah.
who can do amazing
my
things.
favorite.
Yeah, he's awesome. Great guy. Frank and I are, and I got this from him, referring to you as Buddha.
Oh, well, there you go.
The ultimate business philosopher here. Go ahead.
Well, after that, one of the things about, I want to backtrack a little bit and talk about these multi-step things where, if you've got things that seem complex on the surface and may get resistance initially, is to really think them through and make sure that you're making a decision based on logic and not logistics. That if it feels like something might be a little bit more complex to do, you can always figure out the logistics of something if the logic of it makes so much more sense. If it's going to be so much more profitable to do it that way, it's worth figuring out the logistics of how to do something complex.
There's a valuable thing that I mentioned Jerry Ballinger taught me, and it's something that came from Russell Ackoff, and it's something called idealized design. And in idealized design, what you do is, once you've figured out what the thing is that's probably a good idea that'll help the customer, you then try to design the entire process from an idealistic perspective. No constraints, no limitations, no, this wouldn't be possible. You just design the ideal process. And then once you've designed the ideal process, then you go back and say, could I make these things happen? And in a lot of cases, you'll be able to do stuff that you wouldn't have even thought of doing, because in the past you would have been thinking, well, we couldn't do that, so let's leave that out, and then that limits this next step and whatever. And it's back to, Henry Ford saying, cast me an 8-cylinder block for a motor. And his engineers said, it can't be done. And he said, well, do it anyway. And they came back and said, it can't be done. And do it anyway, and it can't be done. And then finally they came back and said, we figured out how to do it. And he said,
It's, something that's really helpful in that. Has anybody seen on the Discovery Channel, they have a show called How It's Made? Have you seen that? Where they go through all these assembly line processes. I ran into some How It's Made marathon one day, and I was glued to it. I just couldn't stop watching. And I realized that that part of my brain was sort of activated from watching that. You start to see how things work in a visual process. I mean, they showed how they were making beer bottles, and it was like, good grief, that's a very complex process. But if it's, when you really think it through, you're thinking through how would it work if it was going to, kind of like that idealized design.
yeah.
Yeah, when you watch that show and you think about your processes as if you were creating an assembly line process for it, it really stimulates that part of your brain.
By the way, give Mr. Dean Jackson a huge round of applause.
Thank you. Thanks.